Hi there, welcome. My name is Sarah Rossi, and I'm here with the Watershed Journal, and I'm going to bring Jess on with me here. Welcome, everybody who has signed on here. We're pretty excited about tonight's event with Sheila. And hey,
Hey,
welcome.
yeah, thanks for setting all this up. And we're well into our author series now.
Yes.
We've got now we have lots of authors booked through May, and recently I've had a lot of poets. So we had Patricia Thrushhart with special guest Wayne Swanger just last Sunday, and then I'm trying to think who was the poet that we had before that.
Oh, I'm looking it up right now. We started off with Wayne. We did David Dreyer, Byron Hoot, Octavia Knight, and our most recent one was Patricia Thrushhart.
Yes.
Yeah, and so then we've got Sheila tonight, Joe Taylor March 14th, and then Jess Weibel March 21st.
Ooh, that should be fun. Okay, so so we had some poetry on Sunday. We've got more poetry rolling with Sheila Squillante tonight, and she's got a new book out that I'm going to let her introduce and talk about, and then she'll do a reading for us, at which point afterwards we'll have a couple questions, be able to bring on some people who have logged in with us on AirMeet to ask their questions. And, anybody on Facebook, if you want to leave a comment or a message for Sheila about her work, then you can do that, and we'll try to monitor those as well. And so we're really excited. She's a wonderful poet. We actually met at the Writers Conference with the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia, the conference last summer, or September, I think it was. And she was on a panel of editors. She was the executive editor for the Fourth River literary publication out of Pittsburgh. And so really interesting, and I'm excited to hear about her experience as a writer and a poet, but also with that editorial eye and, how that interacts with the work that she's created recently. So without any further ado, let's bring her on.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. I can't see myself. Can you wait a minute? I figured it out.
Yay, there you
are. This is my first time using AirMeet, so this is kind of exciting. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah,
you look great. You've got beautiful background of floral images, and so
okay, so it's clear. Good.
Spring is right around the corner.
I hope. Well, anyway, thank you, Sarah and Jess, so much for inviting me, and thanks to all of you who are I can see some people. Hi, Karen, Wyatt, and all my friends in the chat. I am going to read from this book. This is my newly released, October. Is that a new release still? I say it is. It's within a year, right? Yeah. This book is called Mostly Human, and it won the Wicked Woman Book Prize, which I love the name of that, from Brick House Books, which is the oldest continuously publishing small press in Maryland. It's in Baltimore. So I'm going to read from this book. It's a quirky little book, and it's about a character. I sometimes say this is the closest to fiction I've ever gotten to writing fiction, because I don't typically write poetry about a character. And there is a character at the center of this, and you'll meet her in a moment. She is not me, but we are the same age, and we grew up in the same time, and we experience a lot of the same things. But she has some special kinds of abilities that help her get through things that are difficult, that I wish that I had maybe. So I'm going to introduce you to her. This book starts with her as a baby, and it goes all the way until she's about 15 years old. And she is growing up in the 70s and the 80s. So this, the opening poem starts like 1970, and we go from there. So I hope you like her. I'm really fond of her. Round baby hangs on no matter how. Twice your life ago sat a round baby on the porch of a small yellow house near the broken side of the Poconos. Fat stumps of leg poking out from under the walker, toes gripping purchase on the urethaned wood of the deck. Grandparents somewhere. Parents, presumably, too. In the picture, baby holds a nubby orange ball. It looks like a planet. It looks like a tumor. She chews on it and pulls futilely at the foam. Manual dexterity comes later. But baby can already grip grandfather's cigar. Origin stories called her strong. Said she'd hang on no matter how hard he pulled it away. Under the deck, slick flagstone and moss, earthworms and salamanders glinting like stars in the dark woods. This book, as I mentioned before, it's chronological, goes through her life, so I'm going to also be reading chronologically. She's growing up in front of us as we read. Round baby reaches towards interstitial space. At Easter time, there is a lengthening. The light over the earth grows longer. The hyacinth stalks grows taller until purple and pink nubs rupture. Baby lengthens too, legs and arm and neck. She feels herself reaching toward interstitial space. Her head, though, is still a ball. The kitchen smells of sulfur and vinegar. Her stained fingers thrum from mica tabletop. Eggs, at least, have a shallow end, something to interrupt the worry. The balls roll forever, endless, in every direction. You have to chase them into the street. Round baby pronounces and proclaims. Baby's a maker. Fits plastic sticks into gear wheels. Wooden dolls to clamps and dowels. Press here to open. Look, she moves her leg. Baby makes words in new languages with her regular tongue. Strings sounds like plastic beads from a craft kit, shiny balls that scatter and roll, bits of import wedged between nonsense and noise. Baby pronounces and proclaims. Undeterred by syntax, she moves to her own motions, bleats, beats, and buzzings, beautiful illumined sound that signal and suggest. So the book is very much about growing up, adolescence, and all of the attendant awfulness of that time of one's life, in particular in this book of a young girl. So there's a lot about bodies in this book, a lot about how kind of strange and alienating and terrifying, frankly, one's own body changing through puberty can be. Okay. I'm gonna just make sure I'm not missing one that I meant to read. Okay. Round baby's all body. Bouncing baby, strong gripped girl, whirring, twirling, swallow and grow, billow and bound and bleed. Eat. Swim under the ocean and out of the way. Hide in your closet. Stay. Open the bathroom door. Smudge your blood so mother can see. Bend toward vortex. Bruise your shins, arms flailing or pumping like pistons. Baby, you're a fat little furnace, a flesh engine burning with syntax and symbols, humming and stomach, bursting hips with plush lips, with wishes and watching, with worry and will. This is a title poem from the book, and it still doesn't explain anything. I have a friend, when I was first starting to read the poems from this book to audiences, before it was a book, I would sort of try to explain baby and who and what she is. And my friend Dave just kept saying to me, stop explaining. Don't tell them, just read them. So I'm going to be quiet now. Round baby's mostly human. Baby's legs work fine on regular days. Her eyes blink green and seeking. salivary glands active and alive. In the anatomy book of her body, the transparencies proceed as one would expect. Skeletal, muscular, endocrine, cardiovascular, nervous, digestive, excretory, integumentary. Clack, thrum, skin bristle, swallow, flush, flinch. She's mostly human, most of the time, but there are those moments when her connectors seem scrambled. When, say, baby intends simply to lift her head from the concrete steps or hold hard her breath. But what she gets instead is gut trouble, eye spasm, marrow cramp. Or she'll think, blush inside this embrace, small hairs rise, but her synapse will say, contract. And then baby becomes an origami project, small folds into smaller folds, until she is 1,000 paper cranes hanging inside a grimy market window, granting herself her own somatic wish. Okay. Round baby bakes a cake. It's nobody's birthday, but baby bakes a cake anyway. She likes to feed people, loves to watch their faces blush with hunger, then melt into stuffed and sated relief. Their puffed cheeks. Baby reads the recipe and gathers her ingredients. Flour, sugar, milk and eggs, vanilla, mixing bowl, whisk. Wait, baby, what flavor? Sister would say pink and mean Hubba Bubba bubblegum, something sticky and choking sweet. Father's favorites, carrot, spiked with cinnamon and derision, crowned with sour cream. Silly baby. Mother doesn't eat cake. You'd rather have chocolate, bitter as embarrassment, dark and dour, sticking to your hips. Stir everything together until all your luscious lumps dissolve and pour into a metal pan. Bake for 14 years, at whatever temperature will crisp the edges, blister the surface, scorch your sugar till it shines like strawberry lip smacker on shards of mirror glass. Yeah, so bodies are weird. Okay. So most of these poems, you probably gathered by now, have used that titling, method. So most of them start with Brown Baby Does Something. But a couple of them, a handful of them, are in her voice. And here's one of them. Territory. I lick my way across hot wires, over slick teeth, wrap myself around tube-socked calves, the desk pressing into my back. In social studies class, we are studying some war. Muscles tight, tongue. This is not the first mouth, but I will say it is, later. I will claim it. The border walls collapse into themselves when not in use. We kiss like the enemies we are, out in the open, without cover or partition. So I said it was the 80s, so see if you can figure out where this comes from. Chameleons. Wicked words every day, baby. Touch it, he said. He's in my genes better than anyone. I come and go, I come. And he said, you know your lips are really soft, baby, pillow soft, and pulls my hair backstage. He put his hands there, heard me say, he said, I know you better than, said, why don't you leave him? Everyone knows, and you used to be so sweet. Round baby boils the bones. At the kitchen table, baby tears at roasted chicken from the grocery store, pulling limp skin loose. It's mid-afternoon, and sister's in her bedroom, squirming beneath a boy she blew at school. No sound coming out of there, but baby knows. Fingers to greasy lips, she feeds herself, though she's not hungry for once. The white meat separates easily from the breastplate, slides off in one long chunk she can shred. In a few years, sister will escape, flying through an open window, grabbing at skin as she goes. When all the flesh comes off the bird, baby will boil the bones for soup and for jewelry. Wishbones strung like a brittle pendant from the ripcord hanging loosely at her neck. This next one, I wasn't going to read this one, but I think I will, because it does kind of have to do with body. The other thing that is kind of a theme through the poems, through the book, are cultural moments that happened in this time period. So baby shows up or somehow engages several of them, and you've heard about them. You either lived through them or you learned about them in history class. And so here's one of them. Round baby pours down as black rain. She swims through the cooling tubes, waiting for the gap in the system, for the shift to change, the men to get a little lazy the way men do. Baby's made for a moment like that. A sliver, a splinter, a blink, and you'll miss it. It only takes a second to heat herself far beyond fixing. She's an uncontrolled reactor reaction, a level 7 meltdown coming to a town near you. Steam explosion and open air fire, baby's damage goes deep to the core and rises in the air above Pripyat. Isotope baby pours down as black rain over Belarus and Ukraine. Cesium, strontium, iodine, little bits of baby radiate as far away as the Alps. In the village, a wedding band and a vegetable garden, and someone's fishing in the river still. The state delays the way states do. Classical music swims through radio speakers, conditioning citizens to hear some version of the emergency. Baby's gone, but also inside every living thing for miles. Boar bristle, fingernail, fish cheek, cowhide. Find her residue thriving 30 years, 70 years, 3,000 years from now, in the red forest, in the nervous birds, in the dogs missed by bullets, in whatever follows from the brown bear and the lynx, inside the exclusion zone, guarding every glowing thing we left behind. So if you haven't seen the mini-series about Chernobyl, about the Chernobyl accident, and that's what this poem is about, I recommend it cautiously. It's very good and very hard to watch. Very, very dark. There's a lot of dark in this book. I have kind of a dark sensibility. That's okay. Okay, just a couple more. Let's see. What do I have there? Maybe. Thank you. I appreciate that you think dark is valid. I think so too. Let's see. Did I miss one? I feel like I missed one that I wanted to read to you. Nope. Okay. Here we go. Round baby slips on her sexy. Baby's stuck inside a cricket cage, got caught and can't get out. It was bound to happen, baby. How you slipped on your sexy exoskeleton. Fun dress up, such drag. All that light chirping from your fingertips. Be glad they found you out there. God knows where you were going. Pull your swollen ovipositor back from the ready ground. Lift your leg to sing. Okay, I'm going to read you two more poems, including the first poem I read tonight was the first poem in the book, and I'm going to end with the last poem in the book, which I don't usually do because it kind of gives away the ending of the book, but that's okay. This is the shortest poem in the book, so listen because you might miss it. Round baby chews her arm off to get away. God gave you teeth, baby, so by God, use them. This is the last poem. Thanks for your attention. Round baby hip checks the charming abyss. Baby feels pulled towards orbits beyond the scope of her own knowing. Black holes roiling at the center of her galaxy, static sound of a neutron star recorded for broadcast on Nova. She dreams in nebula, Halley's comet streaking across her night mind. Space is where she belongs, baby knows. She's failing physics, though. Too much band room sucking. So she stayed stuck to the thin scrim of earth. That's not true. She never even took it. Never tried. Too many fingers inside. Can't tell you anything about the states of matter, laws of motion, general relativity, trajectory of time. How are stars born? And why so many lies? And what happens to a body, baby, here at the event horizon? Strut toward it, all thrust and bulge and sway, and let it pull you along the elongated axis of your terror. Hip check the charming abyss. Hot glow at the top of your head says, let's go. Time to pull your constituent atoms apart. Spaghettify your cells. It's your pool party, baby, so pencil dive lithe and gorgeous toward the sexy singularity. Become yourself, twinned. Dendritic impulse, reaching neural ray. Exploratory and arboreal, infinite and inevitable. How much they couldn't know. Step forward, baby. Follow her in. Watch yourself go. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for that.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, that was a great reading. I'm going to bring Jess on too here. So forgive me if I look distracted while I'm doing this. I'm trying to remember how to do it. I know that Jess is going to have questions for you, but I'm going to kick in while she's logging in. The second to last poem that you shared, the shortest one, just grabbed me. I mean, you saw my comments all the way through. I really connect with your writing, so thank you.
Thank you.
But I just love, there's the idea of the arm that God gave you and the teeth that God gave you. And it reminds me of advice that I took way differently than it was given of at a time of need of hold on to your rope where you can and cut the rest off. And it just makes me think about you're losing you said this in your second poem, talking about spaghettifying yourself while finding yourself. These are contrasting ideas of the idea of being pulled into a black hole, into a seemingly nothingness, and then the Zen idea of pulling yourself into the void and pulling the void out of you. Anyway, that's a lot of things. But
that's a lot of things. Yeah, I'm glad you're good. You're good on the spot.
Talk to me a little bit about it's the shortest one that you read, and yet for me it's spring. You had so many allusions to things within that it just sprang all this from my mind, and I love that about poetry. But talk to me about that short poem.
Well, so one of the other themes in the book is that, baby's trying to escape her life. She's trying to escape her changing body. She's trying to escape her shitty 80s town and all the boys in the base. There's lots of like drinking, of course, in panel basements in high school and stuff. And she wants out. And there's a thread of space throughout the whole book too. And I didn't really read those poems tonight. But she's kind of fascinated by space totally through the whole thing. Fascinated and terrified at the same time. This book is all about holding those two emotions constantly. And so she keeps getting stuck. She got stuck inside of a cricket cage right before that. She's transformed into a cricket. Elsewhere in the book, she becomes a pencil and the blob from the movies and some other things. So I was just thinking about...
has a lot to do with what's going on here.
Yeah. And that poem, I remember, reading about like animals that will chew their own, limbs off to get out of traps if it means they're going to live. And that's what that poem comes from. Like, just whatever you need to do it and get out.
Amen to that. And then I'll let you jump in.
Thanks.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much that you're doing with this character, this persona, and exploring the experience. And a lot of it I see as paradoxical. And so one of the things that I really love about your approach is that there's sort of the speaker, the one speaking to baby, and with such compassion and grace, understanding, but also like an objectivity, so the language is very much like intimate of like, folding yourself into origami pieces and very, literary devices and figurative, but then also language like, somatic and sexy exoskeleton, and almost as if it's like someone non-human, which again maybe alludes to the title of Mostly Human, that there's like a non-human observer. So tell me a little bit about, the conceptualization of this for you, the process through which you created this character. Did you have this vision of like how it was all going to go, or did you start with one specific thing and then it developed?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I love answering this question. No, I did not have a vision for a character. As I said before, I alluded, I've never written fiction successfully. I tell everybody I'm terrified of writing fiction. I can't do it. I don't have a good enough imagination, right? I'm a poet. Leave me alone, or I'm an essayist. I'll write for my own life. And indeed, I sat down. The first poem of the book is the first poem that I wrote in the series. And it stems from either a photograph that I've seen or that has been described to me, I don't know which, because it's a long time ago, of me as a baby sitting on, in a walker. My grandparents had a house in the Poconos in New York. And I remember this like very, like a Nerf kind of ball, that foam that, Nerfs are made out of. And it was kind of like chemical and toxic. And I don't know why I remember it, but originally I was writing a poem from that picture, that image, and it was me. I was the round baby. I was round as a baby, right? And the ball was round. And I thought for the first few poems that I wrote that I was, okay, I'm writing about my life again. And then I wasn't writing about my life again. And then I don't exactly know where it shifted, but it quickly shifted, and I realized I don't have to tell the truth. I can give her powers I can let her do things. And once I realized that she was not me and she was not all human, we had so much fun. Oh my gosh, we had so much fun. I mean, she climbs Mount St. Helens right before it erupts, and she's just all over the place. But she is still mostly human most of the time. So there's just I didn't want this to be a book that could be easily characterized as fantasy. I wanted it to be more of a fabulous book, a domestically fabulous book that just has sort of a sprinkling of those moments inside of it. And really, it's all a metaphor for like the power that young girls have, I hope.
It's just so interesting to see how you were able to take things that are so hyper specific that they have to come from somewhere really authentic within your memory and your experience. But then let that loose let your imagination go from there, regardless of space and time and, what's possible and what's not possible. Now, how does it feel now that you have the book out and there are things that are you and there are things that are very much not you in terms of your experience? How does it feel to have other people interacting with that work, and then associating you as the writer and somewhat as a speaker? What is that like?
It's fine. I write memoir too, so I'm kind of used to having my stuff out on the screen or the page. But I will say, my mom has heard me read from the book, and she's like, "That's you. That happened. I remember that." And I said, yeah, but it didn't happen quite that way, and I have friends from this time of my life, including a boyfriend from this time of my life who is still a friend of mine. He's like, this seems vaguely familiar, Sheila. And I want it to seem vaguely familiar to not just me, but maybe, other Gen X women, of my generation, but also, any young women who are going through this time of their life. I'm hoping it's vaguely familiar,
No, it certainly resonates. I think that, again, in the authenticity and the things that are hyper specific, they resonate in a way that it's like, oh, only I could be understood in this way, and now I have a language for what I've experienced, or that might not have been exactly how it happened for me, but I feel that. So yeah, incredible. I know that there are several attendees here with us, and one of whom had a question during the reading. So I wanted to invite Patricia Thrushhart to come on and ask her question if she was interested in doing that, and then kickstart other questions that kids might have here.
Great.
Claire, you're muted.
I'm the technology genius. We've got a bunch of people watching on Facebook too, and there's been some great comments going on there too. So Patricia, she's right here with it, so I'm going to pull her on.
Hey there, everyone. Hi. I'm actually in a fairly dark room, so I have a feeling if I put my video on, all you'd see is this frightening suspended head. So maybe
right up my alley.
I was going to say maybe I'd look like Round Baby at some point.
You would, yeah.
Wow, that was just terrific. I really enjoyed the reading, and your use of words, ranging from the very scientific all the way to the very inventive, and even mixing those. It was terrific. I was just curious, being a poet too, how the words appear on the page. I know that sounds a little pedantic maybe, but we as poets, we're so interested in the way we turn the line and how we use form, even in a free form, in a free form book like this. So is it prose? The way you read it, I could see it as prose, but I wonder how you turn the line.
Most of them are not prose. There is the one that I read about that was called Chameleons, which borrows heavily from a song that is from that time. That is a prose poem. But most of them are lineated. Some of them, I don't know if you can see this, Patricia, but some of them have a little bit of happening with white space. That's a poem where she's climbing to the roof of her school. I had fun when I first started writing these poems. I thought somehow they were going to be very small, little, very little dense poems, and they ended up not being that at all. There are some that are quite long, but they are mostly lineated poems.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah. That's helpful. Your reading was terrific, and so I was wondering how you would replicate that on the page when someone doesn't have the luxury of hearing you read. Do you see these poems as standing alone, or do you see them firmly as part of an entire collection?
That's a great question. I think some of them stand alone better than others. They definitely work better together. When I had poems from the collection published, it was hardly ever only one of them. So it was almost always two at least, because they needed to have that, that bolstering of each other. It was a very different kind of book to write and then to read to audiences. Like I was saying before, I kept trying to explain it, and my friend kept saying, "Stop trying to explain it and just let it be what it is." I don't know. Yeah, it's been a fun book to write.
It's a fun book to listen to. I love the idea of using the poetries to almost, develop her character, and each poem just adds another whole layer of color and meaning to her. Do you see your audience extending into, say, young adult? Because ultimately it sounds to me that the book encourages young women to think differently about all of the social expectations we have of them. So do you see the audience stretching into the young adult audience?
I really hope it does. I mean, I had a moment sort of halfway through realizing, is there such thing as YA poetry? I don't know that there is, but if there was, I would think this book might fit, because I have a 13-year-old daughter, and I feel pretty sure that she's going to have a maybe not easier time than I did, but in certain ways, she has more tools than I had at my disposal to deal with things like, sexism and, body stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I hope. I mean, I guess we're going to see, but yes, definitely. I feel like this could be a YA type of thing. In fact, I even asked a friend of mine. Well, actually, what I did was I wrote to my high school. Is in Connecticut, in Western Connecticut, and of course, I haven't been back there in years. But I wrote to the English department there and said, "Hey, I graduated a million years ago, and I have this book of poetry that is some of the poems actually take place in your building. Would you like me to do a Zoom with the students?" But I never heard back. So I
Oh,
guess,
that's unfortunate.
yeah.
Well, I can really see that. I really can. And, it's interesting. I know I'm quite a bit older than you. I'm a boomer. And when I see even the empowerment of your generation captured in some of these poems, and then hoping that feeds the even greater empowerment of your daughter, that's exciting. So I hope
That's really
it
nice.
reaches that type of audience. So thanks for
Thanks
giving
so
me the
much.
time.
Thank you, Patricia. That's really nice to hear. Thank you.
Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Those were some great questions. I appreciate that dialogue. Jess, I'm going to bring you on stage here. But to speak as a millennial, um, I haven't been single for a while, but that time was totally driven by the dialogue from the Gen X music and media and the stuff that was coming out at that time. I know that our experiences were very different in discovering our sexuality. We're going to talk very bluntly. That seems like a big part of what you're writing. What's appropriate for women? What is what is the self-discovery that you can attribute shame to versus pride? And a lot of that for me, I attribute to the Gen X discovery because, I remember being in seventh grade specifically and just being so jazzed about what was coming out and thinking, this has got to change, but now I feel like I kind of know a role to play in it. And I hope that also that I can contribute to, I have a 4-year-old. And so, we're spanning a lot of different kinds of access and exposure. And anyway, I hope that she has from millennials to the Gen Z movement. I think that that's something that's relevant to all of us. So I would be pumped to have that on our shelves at the Watershed.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't tell you how much this particular part of the conversation is meaning to me. I mean, I had conversations with my husband and with friends. Like I thought to myself, I really want this to be relevant to women younger than me and women older than me. I wanted to have that generational connection. So to hear, you both say that it's landing, I'm really just thrilled. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. Sarah, you're muted again. Sarah, you're muted again.
I was trying to give you space to talk, and that was ironically giving you lots of space. But anybody who is here with us on Air Meet, if you want to click the raise your hand button, we'd love to have you come on and ask your questions. Jess, you're about to say something, and then I'd love to share the comments that are going on Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to agree. I've had some experience working. I was a middle school English teacher and then worked with some young writers at the library here. And I'm so glad that Joe picked up on, or Patricia picked up on, because when I was listening to it, it felt relevant for me, and it certainly took me back to like another version of myself, I guess. But it still feels like those questions are still a part of self-discovery and all of that. So I love that. I think that there's a lot of exploration of like spoken word and slam poetry, and that seems to be like the youthful expression that poetry takes. But what you've done is a lot different, and it's still very accessible, very relevant,
Very
but
shocking.
it has a kind of craft and exploration and narrative development that I think would be super important for young women. So
Thank you.
I
Well,
love
if you
that.
have any young women in your lives, let me like
Yeah,
let
yeah,
them know.
no, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
Okay, so Sarah, we've got comments. I saw people on Facebook have been tuning in and on AirMeet too. And I want to encourage anybody with questions, make sure you raise your hand to ask Sheila a question. But what else do we have going on to share?
Yeah, so while we're waiting for people to raise their hand and come on the screen, I know that's a little intimidating, but we would love it. On Facebook, let me go ahead and refresh my screen here. We've got a bunch of people watching there. And of course, my internet is so slow, so this is going to take forever. But we have comments from Christina, Round Baby, always such a pleasure. And Round Baby is living in the uncanny valley. And then Patty Susko loved the pulling the void out, which now I'm embarrassed because I think that's what I said, but thank you, Patty. But anybody here on AirMeet who wants to ask a question or just have a discussion with Sheila, go ahead and raise your hand. We'll give you a little bit to decide whether you want to. And yeah, go ahead.
While we're waiting, I wanted to ask one more question of you, and that is with your role as an editor and as a poet and a part of the literary community that is fairly local to us in Pittsburgh, how would you say are you switching gears from the creative and very open and expressive mode of a writer where you're not too critical or else it would go nowhere, but then also tapping into the experience that you have as an editor and seeing the breadth and depth of work that you have?
It is definitely like a shifting of registers. All of my work is because I work, I'm an administrator and I love that work, which is a rare thing for a poet to say, but I really do love running the MFA program. But I'm also a professor. I teach and I am an editor, as you've mentioned. So I'm kind of adept, I think, at moving these balls around and shifting. I think it's good for me because it means that I can stay kind of lithe and nimble in different ways. Different muscles are working. There's a little bug that just flew into my eye. I get a lot out of editing. I learn a lot about what's happening in the writing world. And of course, the Fourth River is a journal of nature and place writing, so that's not exactly what I'm writing usually, although I do some of it. But still, you can get a sense, sort of feel the pulse of what people are interested in, what they're writing about. And that's really valuable for any writer, I think, especially if you're a working writer who wants to see their work out in journals. And of course, I do still. I always will. And more than that, I love working with my students and seeing that develop in them, to be able to say to them, and I'm not actually the editor-in-chief anymore, so I don't teach the practicum class like I used to, but I did teach it for 7 years. And when I was teaching it, that's one of the first things I would say, like, this editorial work is going to strengthen your creative work. And the work that you do in the workshop with your own work, I think makes us more empathetic towards the people that are sending their stuff through the submittable queue, because we've been on that side of things and we know what it feels like to be sending our babies into the void. The void is back. Yeah
Absolutely.
I hope that answers. Yeah
And I think we have someone raising their hand to ask a question, so I don't want to take up too much time, but Michael Benini, who you may recognize his name.
Yes.
Well, we were at Penn State together for a couple of years.
We were grad school together.
Yes, that's correct. I think I sat next to you in the office, but that's.
Hi, Mike. It's been a long time. Yeah.
I enjoyed your stuff. I think you mentioned in your biography you had a class with Vivian.
Huh?
I think we got into that same class, but on that same subject. Are you considering doing some memoir writing in the future, or
I
maybe being it?
I do write memoir. In fact, I'm working on a book length memoir project right now. That's not done yet, but I write. If you look at my website, I've been writing memoirs since that class at Penn State all those years ago. So that was a really rough class.
No.
Yeah, but I learned a lot. Yeah,
She was tough. Okay, I just
yeah, she was
just
tough.
checking it. All right, thank you.
Great to talk to you.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you, Mike. That was great.
That's wild. Wow. Okay.
I was just thinking about, like, what if I published a book and people from my school came on here to talk to me? That's
really nice.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, 20 years.
Maybe a little intimidating.
That's all right. That's great. That's really nice.
wonderful.
Well,
Terrific.
I think that we have, we've been able to hear from you, which has been wonderful. We've been able to hear from people in the group here, which is great. Any other things that you would want to mention? We've got a lot of poets and writers tuning in to hear from you, and certainly your expertise and your capabilities and talents as a poet are very compelling, and we can learn a lot from you. Is there anything in terms of the Pittsburgh scene that you're in that would you could kind of throw a bone to us out here in rural northern Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I would add to that. Patricia asked, can we learn a little about Fourth River and the kind of work that journal sees?
Yeah, sure can. So Pittsburgh, is a thriving space for writers. It's really very rich. And the Fourth River is we are a print and online journal of nature and place-based work. So we accept poetry, nonfiction, fiction, and visual art. And it is run by the students in the MFA program and the faculty. I'm very proud of the work that we do there. The idea is to think about those categories of nature and place and kind of push on the boundaries a little bit. Like, what does it mean to be a nature poem? Like, what it used to mean to be a nature writer. You're probably imagining an old white man right now. And we're trying to push away from that and interrogate that. And same thing with place, nature and place, and the sort of confluence of those things. Chatham University is in Pittsburgh, so it's an urban campus, but it's an arboretum. So it's this little tiny jewel surrounded by trees. You would really never know you were in a city. So it's kind of an interesting place, and that I think informs a lot of kind of the ethos of the journal. So we would love to have you submit. I think we might be open for submissions right now. I should know, but I don't.
How fortuitous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. And the other thing I was going to say for anybody who's listening, if you're interested in an MFA program, Chatham's got a good one. We have a low residency program and a full residency program. We have concentrations in travel writing and nature writing and social engagement. We have a wonderful program called Words Without Walls, which teaches graduate students to teach in alternative spaces. Like we teach classes in the Allegheny County Jail and in halfway houses. So social engagement, social outreach are really important to us. And if you're interested, just shoot me a line. I'm happy to answer questions.
No, great. Yeah.
And I guess I would ask one more thing, that if you do grab a copy, and I would love it if you would, I would really love it if you would go through our Pittsburgh independent bookstore, White Whale. They have my book stocked. You can order it online. They ship. So if you want to get the book, that's the best place to get it.
Yes, and we all want to get the book. So White Whale, and then you can find them online on Facebook. I know they're on Twitter. So to get connected, and then that's so great. Have you done events with them?
Many.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. They're wonderful people.
Oh,
thank
good.
you. They're great.
That's whitewhalebookstore.com.
Yeah.
And viewers can keep up with you at Sheila Squillante. And I'm going to say, I hope I don't say her name wrong.
You did it. You got it. No.
SheilaSquillante.com. You can get previews of who you are and the writing that you've done. You've got a great website going on there.
you.
And then again, if you want to get her book, Mostly Human, which apparently is a bit sci-fi and a bit abstract, but definitely relatable. And that's Mostly Human at whitewhalebookstore.com.
Thank you. There are also aliens in this book that I did not read to you. So.
I feel like the sci-fi element is absolutely a seller, not just for the generation, but with looking within our own writers group that we have together, there's a bunch of sci-fi, just absolute nerds.
Cool.
And it's wonderful. So that's a great thing to underline. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you both
exciting
so
to
much.
see what you're doing here. It's really, really been a pleasure to hear from you about it.
Pleasure to be here. I really appreciate this is a great conversation. I really enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Same here. And for everyone who's joining in with us, speaking of Writers Block Party, we have our next meeting coming up at the last Sunday. Just look for that for the last Sunday of every month, pretty much from here on out. But there's information. If you're a writer out there and you want to have a little bit of inspiration and encouragement, you can check out Writers Block Party on Facebook or at the watershedjournal.org/WBP. Pardon my dog. So anyway, we love the idea of inspiring each other and moving each other along. And so we invite everyone to virtually join in with us. And then next up, we've got a couple of other writers like we mentioned at the beginning. So if you're wanting to keep up with all of our ongoings at Watershed, the watershedjournal.org, again, the /calendar, will keep you up to speed. Anything else you want to end with there, Jess?
No, I'm so glad that we're still able to connect this way. And thank you, Sarah, for setting this up. Thank you, Sheila, for being here. And thank you, everybody who tuned in. And we're going to keep the connection going as much as we can and hope to be able to gather together in the same space someday soon. So, all right. Yeah, thank you, everyone. This was great.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.